This is a very short video about congruent shapes. Congruent shapes are identical shapes. They may have been reflected, they could be a mirror image. They may have been rotated, so they could have been turned, or they could have been translated, which is just a horizontal and or a vertical movement. Two or more shapes that are the same size and the same shape are congruent. So congruent shapes are identical. They could have been turned, moved or reflected, but essentially it's the same shape and it's exactly the same size. So if you have a little look at the shapes on the board, you'll see shape A has been rotated or turned upside down to give you shape B. It hasn't been changed in size at all, so it is still in the identical shape, it's just been turned, so A and B would be described as congruent. If we go back to A then, see how it's been changed to shape C. It's just been moved across the page horizontally and up the page vertically. So again, it's exactly the same shape, it's identical, it's just been moved across the board, so we can say that A, B and C are all congruent. Finally, shape D, that's a mirror image or a reflection of shape A. So again, A, B, C and D, these are all congruent shapes. They are all identical shapes, the same size, they've just been turned or moved or reflected across the board. Now these two shapes on the board, yes, they're both rectangles, but they are not congruent shapes because although they are both rectangles, so they're similar, they're not exactly the same size. They don't have the same size, so we couldn't not call these two shapes here congruent. And finally, just to finish off, we'll have a little look at a past paper question. So the question says, use the diagrams above to identify and write down a pair of congruent shapes. So remember, congruent shapes, same shape, same size. So in this case here, the congruent shapes would be C and G. Shape C and G are exactly the same shape and exactly the same size. The next question says, a pair of shapes which are similar but not congruent. So if you now have a look at shape A and H, they are both similar looking stars, but H is obviously bigger than A. So they are not congruent, they're not identical, but they are similar. So we would say A and H. And finally, the last question, it asks for another pair of shapes which are similar but not congruent. So that pair there would be E and I. They are both octagons, they've both got 8 sides. However, I is an enlargement of E, so they are not congruent. So it's E and I are similar but not congruent. And that's the end of the video.